society cannot survive if we continue along the path that we have already started taking, if we just look at the young generation. That's a very important distinction, to see children and to imagine how they will be when they grow up. How healthy will they be? Will they be able to work, to carry a job, to be productive, to be fruitful? I'm not talking about being fertile and making another generation if we want to survive as a society, but just will they be able to sustain themselves so that society won't be burdened by paying their medical bills? How are children going to be healthy adults when they start their lives on drugs, on medical drugs? If 1 out of 3 American children are taking currently psychiatric or other types of drugs, they're not going to be healthy adults. It's impossible to be poisoned chronically and grow up healthy. So what will happen with them? And I have a perfect comparison to make with my 20,000 children in Nepal. With 20,000 children, not even one suffers from autism. They don't even know the meaning of the word. They've never seen it. Not even one has childhood cancer, allergy, asthma, ADD, ADHD, autoimmune diseases. Everything we expect children to have now, it's normal to expect them to be on a drug for this or for that. Over there it doesn't exist with 20,000 children. So something is really inherently wrong about how we treat our children here and how we eliminate the concept of causation and focus only on symptoms, which is great to make drug companies rich, to make the medical industrial complex wealthy, to make hospitals wealthy with all the cancer wings that they are building for children. But what will be in the future? If you are a child who's getting chemo at age 10 or 9, after you overcome your cancer, what health do you have? By the time you're 20 or 30, you're just a shadow of what you could have been. And that's because you've been poisoned beyond repair. Just to save you from cancer that could have been easily prevented, but nobody wants to know how to prevent it. Nobody wants to know what's causing it. They can no longer say aging leads to cancer because we live too long if children are getting it in large quantities, and they do. That's why we need to learn from children elsewhere who serve as a control group, who are not sick, who just need to be fed and protected, and then they become instantly the healthiest children in the world. We all were children once, and we all were healthy once, presumably. A lot healthier than the children of today. And as we grew up, we started accepting certain facts as evident, as self-evident truths that we cannot doubt. And one of them is the concept of cancer being a scary entity. So when I say cancer to a patient for the first time, I can immediately see the patient skipping a beat, losing a breath, and immediately they enter panic state. Why is that? Because as a society we have been indoctrinated to expect that cancer is a horrible thing. Because it's been diagnosed in its latest phase, all the time. Every test that you do for cancer today is designed to discover cancer in such a late phase that it would bring you instantly into the oncologist's office. This is a paradigm that we have been so accustomed to that we forget that maybe there's another way where an oncologist would not even be consulted or ever necessary. An oncologist is a person who's designed to catch your cancer so late, in such an advanced phase, that they can justify the chemo, the radiation, the horrible surgery, and today the immunotherapy. You heard of immunotherapy? Yeah. Oncoimmunotherapy? It's considered the latest thing. And nobody tells you that out of every 10 people who receive this treatment, maybe 9 die from the side effects. And one that survives is a miracle. So only that one person can talk about his or her experience, and then our statistics are skewed by that survivor because we don't hear the story of those who didn't make it. They take people with the most advanced cancer, the one that we kind of raise our hands and say, sorry, we can't help you anymore, and try something new. And most of them die from the severe immune reaction, rejecting their own organs as a result of this immune therapy. But if you ask people in the street, they will tell you it's the best thing. And they all are eager to receive this treatment because they've seen that one survivor out of 10. Do you think that you will be necessarily that one? You don't know. The chances are only 10%. So even the immune therapy is another one of the armament, the arsenal of the oncologist that you better not get to that point. And if we look at a simple graph that I will draw for you, it will be a graph of time and virulence. Time will be on the x-axis. Here's T. T stands for time. And the x-axis stands for V, virulence. Virulence of cancer. Over time, most people, as the cancer has time to evolve, the virulence goes up as time goes on. And our job today, if we are oncologists, is to catch cancer right here. This is called early detection. Seriously. Even when you do something like a colonoscopy, which is touted as an early detection, it catches you here. And how do I prove that point? By simply reviewing the statistics. What happened to those people who are diagnosed here with colorectal cancer as a result of colonoscopy? 40% of them will die. The other 60% will have to live without a colon because they'll have a major surgery. And they will have to also be sick because of radiation and chemo. And many of them will die just after the 5-year mark. Therefore, they will be considered a success story because their metastasis will take a while to grow. They will have tiny tumors that will not be noticeable symptomatically, and they will be okay until 3 or 4 years after the diagnosis, and then they will discover they have a severe metastasis, and it will take another year or year and a half to die from it, so they will die just after the 5-year cut-off schedule for determining that this was a successful treatment. If you die after 5 years and 1 day, it's still successful, because we only are waiting 5 years before we can claim success. Therefore, colonoscopy is extremely late if 40% will die. Why is it that people are standing in line to do this procedure when it's obviously going to be a horrible finding? When you can actually visualize the cancer with a naked eye, with a camera, it's way too late. You don't want to wait for that. So advanced diagnosis means not waiting until you're here, but catching it when it's here. This is where we want to catch the cancer. Because if we are here, what do we have a lot of? Time. Because we caught it early on, there's a long time before the cancer has time to evolve. We can enjoy that time to figure out what is the best approach. We're not in a rush. There's no panic. We can also avoid being pushed into doing horrible things that we would regret later. That's really important. But no less important is the virulence aspect, because that will be a lot lower. When you catch it here, the virulence is here, where when you catch it here, the virulence is already up on the top. It's so high, it's very difficult to overcome. So we want to catch cancer at the lowest virulence and at the earliest time. And for that, we have to define the cancer. We have to redefine it, because if you're an oncologist, you define a cancer as an entity that is so bad that you have to cut people, radiate them, chemotherapy them, damage them. It's justified, because the condition is so horrible that they will be willing to do anything to survive. So that's the definition of cancer if you're an oncologist. That's why you don't want to ever see one. They should not be practitioners of choice for anything. It's too late by the time you see them. What you want is a new paradigm where you catch cancer so early that it will not be scary. It will not be the big C anymore. It will be a tiny C. Something that you don't care if you get diagnosed with. And when I diagnose people every day with cancer, I immediately tell them, this is like telling you that you have a flu. Are you scared when you have a flu? In fact, in some cases, these cancers can be eliminated faster than eliminating the flu is possible. So it's even easier, especially with skin cancer. We can eliminate skin cancer in about a minute. And the flu takes at least 7 days. So I'd rather have skin cancer than have the flu, because it's so easy to eliminate. So finally, people start understanding that the word cancer should not be so scary. And then also their mindset is improved, because obviously the fear creates an inappropriate blood circulation change, bringing the immune system to the wrong places, and also your natural killer cells and your cytokines and different types of inflammatory mediators and immune components are going to function differently when you are not under the stress and the fear of cancer. You have a much better chance to overcome it using your own mind, in addition to the other treatments that are available to strengthen your system, improve your resistance, and actually even kill the tumor. Even if you have to do the killing of the tumor in a slightly unnatural way, it's still a good idea. And I'll tell you why in a minute when we get to that point. So if you understand the new paradigm, then let me give you a few examples. Because it's hot in here and we don't want to stay here too long, do we? It's a very tropical paradise that has been created by Jane. So thank you for hosting us in your little paradise. I feel like home now. My new home is in Florida. So it's very nice. We need to understand this by showing a few examples. So the first example that I want to share with you will be that of the skin cancer, because that's very easy for you to understand, and you can also see skin cancer when it's occurring readily. Let's talk about melanoma. That's the scary one. Everybody is afraid of melanoma. But melanoma is such an easy disease to eliminate from the face of the earth. It's a shame that we still talk about it and that we still know so many people who die from it. We can guarantee that it will be eliminated if we do very simple things to catch the melanoma here. And it's not so hard, because we have science to tell us where the melanoma starts. Where does melanoma start? Not from a textbook picture of melanoma. When doctors learn in medical school what melanoma looks like, they see a picture of a very advanced lethal melanoma at the latest phase. It looks like a big thing on your skin somewhere, with varied colors, asymmetry, extremely large diameter. Sometimes it starts protruding, sometimes it starts bleeding. All of those will only be caught when the cancer is almost metastasized or already have metastasized. Very risky to wait until the textbook picture of melanoma. So we have to ask ourselves, where does it start? How does melanoma look like when it is still in the earliest phase? And it's so easy, and it's in the medical literature, including the Journal of Dermatology. When you have a tiny, tiny speck, a tiny black flat speck that you cannot feel with your finger because it's not protruding, but you can see it. And most people have something like that. It could be on your butt, or on your torso, or between your toes, or underneath your feet, or on your scalp. Mostly in areas where the sun does not shine. Think about it for a second. You've been brainwashed by the medical establishment that you should stay out of the sun. I'm now writing an introduction to a book called Embracing the Sun, which will be the book to show you all the wonderful benefits of the sun outside of vitamin D. You already know about vitamin D, but it covers so many other aspects that show that holistically the sun is doing so many wonderful things to our physiology. Yet the doctors tell you to stay out of the sun as if they know better than nature or better than God. They tell you not to observe the rules of nature. And as a result, people get sicker with more melanomas than ever, especially if you use the sunblocks, which prevent the benefit of the UV and also increases the risk of the rest of the solar radiation, the 96% of solar radiation that hits you and is not filtered by the UV blocks for maybe 30 times longer, because you have 30 times longer to stay in the sun before you get burnt. It's called SPF 30. And that's why people who are using sunblocks and who are avoiding the sun have dramatic increase of risk of melanoma. Think of people that you know who have a melanoma. Do they have it on their face? Almost never. If it were related to the sun, you would expect melanoma to be on the face, wouldn't you? Yeah. So how come it's not? And how come we still believe the lies that we're told by the establishment, especially by the skin doctors, who are becoming more important because they give you this advice? Because now you're going to run to them when they have melanoma. They're benefiting from the advice that they've given. It's a bad conflict of interest. You cannot expect the truth to come from this direction. So just look at people yourself and you'll see. They don't get melanomas on their face. They get it where the sun does not shine. So if you have a tiny dark spot that is flat, a speck that appeared out of nowhere in the last year or 6 months, and you don't recognize it because you don't have a name given to it yet. This one you know you had for a long time. But here there's something brand new. Those are the risky ones. They grow inward. They don't grow sideways. That's why the most virulent melanomas come from the smallest lesions, because they go entirely into the tissues. Whereas the doctors that are looking at you at the skin, the annual skin checkup, are looking for something that grew wide, something that is 0.6 centimeters and above, an eraser head size. And only that interests them. But those usually have the shallowest roots and they are not of interest. Instead of paying attention to the tiny ones that could kill you. And that's why when you finally get diagnosed as having a melanoma by a dermatologist, it's too late. It looks like the textbook. By that time, the root that was growing further and further inside your body has started to spread in all directions and finally hitting the surface of the skin, when it becomes visible as a wider, irregular lesion. And at that point, you can justify the panic and do a major surgery. Or do something else. What would that be? A biopsy. So again, why are we doing biopsies? Because supposedly it's early detection, right? But it's the same thing as what we mentioned earlier about the colonoscopy. If you find something that is big enough to biopsy, it's advanced. It's not early. Early will be so small. You can't stick a needle through it. You cannot even aim the needle. to hit inside it instead of by mistake going to adjacent tissues. But something worse than that and more sinister is happening. When you cut into a tumor, when you put a needle into it, you're spreading it. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This has been proven scientifically. I have 150 scientific research papers demonstrating that when you stick a needle through a cancer, you spread it. It sounds horrible, because that's the standard of care. How come they don't know it, you would ask? So one aspect of it is that all that research comes from Europe and Asia, not in the United States, and not in countries that follow the US system, like Israel, for example. Israel is the 51st state when it comes to medicine. So they're doing exactly what they do in the US, and as a result, they keep doing business as usual. They do the biopsy, and they don't want to know the truth. So how do we know the truth? By looking at the scientific research. What study proves above any shadow of doubt that cancer is being spread? The one that looked at needles that were inserted into a cancer, taken out of it, and now they're looking under a microscope to see if cancer cells have adhered to the needle on the outside. If cells have adhered to the needle and you can test them when you take the needle out of the body, that's a no-brainer, isn't it? You would agree that this would be an indication that you actually got vital cancer cells out of the tumors and they're still on the needle outside of it. Not just inside of it where you do the biopsy, when you do fine needle aspiration. And in 70% of the studies that were done, they found those cells on the surface of the needle. That's why biopsy is a horrible option. Nobody should allow it. And in Europe, there are organizations of doctors whose sole purpose is to find alternative diagnosis to a biopsy. Because they know that this is so dangerous that most people who die from metastasis die not from the cancer coming back after being told falsely for 3 or 4 years that they are in remission. They have never been in remission. They already had the metastasis started from the biopsy. And it's just a matter of time, 2 years, 3 years, from my experience, between 3 and 4 years is the most common time to figure out when you already have large enough nodules in your lungs or in your liver or in your bones, and it's too late. But during the entire time, those 3 or 4 years, you had tiny, tiny seeds that were coming out of the biopsy, and they're still invisible, they're still microscopic. You have no symptoms. And why are you being told that you have remission? Why are you being lied to? Because a test is being done to justify the lie. What is that test? The PET-CT. You all heard about PET-CT? Positron emission tomography, CAT scan, but it's made specially to diagnose cancer. It only shows cancer when it's at least a centimeter in diameter, this big. Has to be this big before you can actually diagnose it. Does that mean that until it's diagnosed you have no cancer? Of course it doesn't mean that. So why are they lying to you and telling you you're in remission? Because it's convenient. It's easier to tell you you're in remission and send you home. And then you keep your lifestyle that created the cancer in the first place. Because nobody tells you anything, you feel good. But you're not in remission. The cancer is taking its time, growing from those tiny seeds. 3 to 4 years later, you will have metastasis diagnosed. You will survive another year or 2 years. You'll cross the 5-year point. You'll be a success story. But it will not be the cancer coming back. That's the lie. It's the same cancer that's been spread by the biopsy. One day, American doctors will admit the barbarism of today. And admit, only after they no longer do it, only after everybody agrees it might take 20 years or 30 years, that it's not the thing to do, only then they will say, back in the days, the doctors who have retired already and cannot be sued used to be so barbaric that they did biopsies when we should have known better, because we know that they spread the cancer and everybody will know that. But right now it's considered a heresy to even say it. And somebody is going to try and shoot me for saying that and kill the messenger so that the message will not be believed. We need to find other ways to diagnose the cancer much earlier than a tumor that can be pinched with a needle, and find ways to diagnose it without a biopsy. So there are ways. It depends on where the suspicion is. Let's say, for example, that you have a growth in your breast. You just feel it when you do a breast self-exam. And you worry, is it a cancer or is it not? You have several options. None of them involve a biopsy. But unfortunately, when you go to the surgeon, when you want to get rid of that tumor, and you say to the surgeon, please take it out, I don't want a biopsy, just take it out with clean margin, it's very small, it's called a lumpectomy. It's not a big deal, you can go back home and live a normal life, and you don't have to lose your breast. So you tell the doctor that, and what will the surgeon say to you in exchange?
Do a biopsy first.
He said, I'm not going to do the surgery until I do the biopsy first.
Right.
They put you in that vicious cycle. And they ignore that the science that exists about alternative ways of diagnosing cancer. One of them is ultrasound. With a simple ultrasound today, you can aim the ultrasound, see the tumor, move the tumor with your other hand to displace it, and from how it displaces, you can tell with 99% accuracy if it's cancer or not. No need for needles. That's far more accurate than a biopsy is, and you just did ultrasound. You cannot do it with other types of tumors. We don't always have that kind of access. But why aren't doctors doing that? It's already published in the scientific literature. I didn't invent that. Some people who do ultrasonography are doing that already. But nobody else does it because the biopsy is the golden rule. I'll answer questions later, okay? Thank you. So what other method? We can do a 3T MRI, 3 Tesla MRI, which is a high power MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. There's no radiation, just magnetic field. And you could actually see if it's cancer or not cancer if it's above 0.6 centimeter. So it has to be fairly good size. But if you have a tumor that you can feel with your fingers, it's probably that big and you'll be able to tell with a 3T MRI. Unfortunately, most women don't get told about that. They get pushed to do the biopsy. But a 3T MRI will tell you with great accuracy if you have cancer of the breast or not. And we don't need the biopsy. You can also do the blood test, the Inox-2 blood test, regular simple blood from the vein, and it tells you with 99.6% accuracy whether or not you have cancer in your body and what is the tissue of origin. So if you have a lump in your breast that seems to grow, you do the blood test, it says breast cancer, there's a fairly good chance it's that lump. Not 100%, maybe there's another lump. Maybe that one is benign, but there's something else we didn't feel yet. This is not specific like the 3T MRI and the ultrasound that I mentioned earlier. So you see there are options. And I'm not going to go right now through each and every option, but I'm giving you examples on how you can diagnose cancer so much earlier without resorting to a damaging, dangerous biopsy. And then you might ask, so what do we do? So let's say we found that tiny dot on your skin that could become a melanoma one day. Or let's say that we did find that this tiny tumor was displaced by pushing on an ultrasound in a way that indicates it's cancer. What do we do next? Well, for every situation we have different possibilities. We just have to select them based on what works best in previous experience of doctors who use those methods. For example, with the skin. Why did I say melanoma is a thing of the past? Because all you need to do is eliminate those tiny black dots, right? We all know from the medical literature that the #1 risk factor for melanoma is multiple pigmented nevi, many dots that are dark. The more of them you have, the higher the risk, because all it takes is one of them converting into a melanoma. So if you have 100 of them on your skin, what would common sense tell us? Eliminate 100, right? Now, if you had a surgery as your only method, would you want to do that? Would you succumb to 100 surgeries? Obviously not. That's why skin doctors ignore those tiny dots that can become melanomas, because all they have is surgery. So they have to wait until the surgery is justified. But if you have a method to simply peel off those dots with no pain, with no surgery, with no needles or knives, and you can eliminate the dark spots so there are no roots behind, so it's now white instead of a dark spot, then you eliminate the risk of melanoma completely. Because melanoma comes from melanocytic cells, those that create the pigmentation. And if the lesion has grown deep inwards, and by the way, every lesion is three-dimensional. Even if it's smooth to the touch, you put your finger and you cannot tell that anything is there. It's not two-dimensional any more than a piece of paper is, right? Give me that piece of paper. Thank you. This is very thin, isn't it? But is it only two-dimensional? Does it have only width and length?
No.
No, it has depth. But that depth is very thin. It's tiny depth. It's less than a millimeter, less than half a millimeter, maybe a tenth of a millimeter. But it's still three-dimensional, or you wouldn't see this paper. Right? If it only had length and width, would you see this paper? It wouldn't exist as far as you're concerned. The same is true for tumors. Even if something is totally smooth, even if you cannot feel it with your fingers, it has three dimensions. And since it's not sticking outwards, where is it going? Inwards. That's the third dimension. It goes into your body. And the small ones that appear out of nowhere are the most virulent, the most invasive, the most aggressive, and the most lethal, according to a study that was published in the American Journal of Dermatology. So if you eliminate them, great. But if they have a deep root, you eliminate the outer layer and you're not guessing, because now you see the root. It's exposed. It goes up to the surface. So in the second time you remove the second layer, it may be very well the last. And once there is no pigment, you're done. In 90% of the cases, one treatment is enough. In a few cases where lesions are really deep, it might take 2 treatments. Maybe once in 1,000, it might even need a 3rd treatment. But that's it. No more than that. And this is how we always catch melanoma when it's here. And never when it's here. And if you catch it and eliminate it, that's it. It will never have a chance to grow. It will be gone. That's why nobody should have a melanoma anymore. What about carcinoma? A different type of skin cancer. Also very easy to eliminate, because there are 2 types of carcinoma, basal and squamous. The basal starts from the basal layer. The basal layer of the skin is very superficial, easy to get to. It's at the bottom of the epidermis. It's microscopic in thickness. With one application, one treatment, without a surgery, you can go down to the basal layer and peel it off. So even if you have a basal cell carcinoma, one treatment takes it out. If you have a squamous cell carcinoma, would it be deeper or more superficial? What do you think?
Deeper.
It's actually more superficial. Because squamous cell carcinoma starts from the squamous cells that are even closer to the surface of the skin. Unfortunately, squamous cell carcinoma is more aggressive if it's allowed to enter the circulation. As long as it's on the surface of the skin, it's not likely to kill anybody. You just need to let it stay there. How do you prevent it from staying there? By doing a biopsy. That's why the only people I've ever seen die from squamous cell carcinoma, metastasis resulting from it, were those who first did a biopsy. They came to me proud with a diagnosis. They knew what they had. Look, I have SCC. And my heart falls down, thinking, oh my goodness, they don't know. They're so proud. And I wish it was a BCC, because BCC is not so invasive or aggressive or lethal, even if it's been biopsied. But it's a Russian roulette. You don't know in advance. You're biopsying for the purpose of finding out, but sometimes while you find out, you also kill the patient in order to find out. That's ridiculous. It's so easy to eliminate. Plus, if you scoop it, like they sometimes use a tiny sharp spoon, you push it deeper, and then the treatment becomes far more elaborate. You need 2 or 3 treatments to eliminate something that would have easily been eliminated in just one session. So carcinoma, as long as you don't get invasive with it or biopsying it, is the easiest thing to eliminate, even if it reached this spot. Even here, at the highest virulence, highest advancement of the carcinoma, you can easily get rid of it. So skin cancer is a thing of the past, but melanoma is especially important. So now you understand, what do we do about it? Now, could we do the same thing with other types of cancer? That would be great, wouldn't it? Because we only talked about skin deep so far. So obviously we want to be able to catch cancer when it's really early and do something about it like we do with the skin. So let's talk back again about colonoscopy and colorectal cancer. We agreed already that if you catch cancer in the colon through a colonoscopy, it's way too late, because 40% will die and the others will have to live without a colon, very poor life quality. So if we caught it here, what do we do about it? How do we eliminate the cancer when we catch it here? Can we treat it to peel it off from the outside? Not really, not with ease, because it's hard to access, and sometimes it's hard to see the cancer. When it's still microscopic, you don't see it. What if you have 1,000 tiny microscopic cancers in your colon, spread throughout the whole length of the pipe? What then? How would you see it? You cannot see it. A camera won't show it. Do you need to see it? Maybe you don't need to see it. You just need to know it's there. How do you know it's there? By using the power of chemistry. Every cancer cell in the colon is secreting a specific enzyme called M2PK, M2 pyruvate kinase. That enzyme is obviously going to be secreted into your poop in greater amounts when your cancer is bigger, or when you have more cancerous areas simultaneously in one person. And therefore you have a numerical value for what is normal, no cancer, versus what is high, indicating the presence of colorectal cancer. And the higher the number is, the more advanced the tumor is. So this is a test I've been doing for 14 years, since most of you were babies. And I had to send people's poop to Germany to find out, because there are no labs in the US that do this test, because colonoscopy is the king, and the queen, and the prince. We live in the dark ages where still royalties prevail. And it's the tradition of doing colonoscopy that makes a lot of money for the gastroenterologist, who determine that it is a necessary diagnostic screening test, obviously with a big conflict of interest. And that's why America is spending billions of dollars every year on colonoscopies that kill 70,000 Americans every year. While how many people get diagnosed with colorectal cancer every year? 50,000. So right. 70,000 people die from the procedure itself. 50,000 get diagnosed as a result of the procedure. Why do they die? laceration, perforation, massive hemorrhages, heart attacks from the laxative that leads to hypokalemia, and people die from the colonoscopy. And then, of course, there are about 300,000 or 400,000 or 500,000 people who don't die, but have such severe adverse effect that they almost die. And they're going to be damaged for a long time as a result. And all that for what? To diagnose it when it's here, when it's too late. Ridiculous. So colonoscopy should not be a screening test. Should never have been allowed to be, and it's never been proven scientifically to reduce the mortality or morbidity from colorectal cancer in the population. So why are we doing it? I don't know. You probably know better than me. The M2PK test. I sent all the way to Germany, but you can poop in the comfort of your own home. Even in your kitchen if you want. And you can put it straight in the freezer, and you can carry it to the freezer, to the kitchen, or you can put a freezer in your bathroom and it will be easier. It's up to you. Either way, you send the box to Germany, that's where they take care of it, and gradually a lot of American poop is accumulating in Europe. One day Europe will sink under American poop burden. I just need more patients in Germany to bring their poop here for some American tests.
I'm sorry, I just have to interrupt. There was a show on NPR the other day, what does New York City do with its poop? And so they used to just put it in the ocean, but a few years, 30 years or so ago, they got interested in using it as fertilizer. They approached every city in this country, and they all said, they were taking poop from lots of cities.
But not New York poop, God forbid.
They would not take New York poop.
Oh my goodness.
No, finally, in Colorado, there was one city that took New York City poop. They said,
wow.
We don't want New York City poop.
Well, I guess, New York poop has a reputation. Somebody experienced the sewer of New York and never wanted to bring it to their own hometown. Totally understand. Although Manhattan seemed to hold fairly well under big towers, so I don't think it would collapse under your own pies or cakes. Or, it's not going to be as bad as some of those skyscrapers. Stool scrapers, that's what we should have. Poop scrapers. At any rate, the poop goes to Germany. We test for the level of M2PK. You get the results. If it's above 4, you have colorectal cancer with very high level of accuracy. So far, in 14 years that I have been doing it, I managed to use techniques that I didn't know at first if they would work, but I kept trying, because what do you do about a positive test when it's so early that you cannot see it on colonoscopy? You have to try to do things to treat it, right? Mm-hmm. So every time I caught an M2PK that was between 4 and 10, it was positive, I felt fairly comfortable because it's still low enough to treat it while it's still here, instead of immediately send him to an oncologist who wouldn't know what to do about it because they need to have it here to know what to do. Since there's plenty of time, let's take 3 months. 3 months is not a long a time, This T here could be years. So only 3 months. Let's try 3 months of therapy and then test again. That's what you would do too, right? We have 3 months. If the numbers go down, it's a good sign. We don't have to worry. So that's what I did for 14 years. And every time I learned what works better, what works faster. And so far, everybody who was between 4 and 10, 100%, within 3 months, if they followed the instruction, had a negative M2PK, meaning no cancer, in only 3 months. Without peeling it, without putting any material on it, like the skin condition that I mentioned earlier, where you peel them. Here you don't have to peel them, they peel themselves off. Why is that? Because the colorectal mucosa has a half-life that is much shorter than the turnover rate of the skin. The skin takes 28, 29 days to turn over. Mm-hmm. The colorectal mucosa, 7 to 9 days. So in theory, if you do a good job eliminating the risk factors, there is a very good chance that the cancer will slough off by itself because of the turnover rate of the cells, the epithelial cells of the mucous membrane. They just simply slough off. So give them a chance to slough the cancer off by themselves, and that's what they do, apparently, because 100% success rate for people who are between 4 and 10 is great. What about 10 to 20? That's already a little higher. What about people who are 30? And I've had people who were 70 to 80 M2PK finding. Those people simply took longer time. 3 months were not enough. But after 3 months, I still tested them to see if the numbers are going down, so we're in the right direction. After 3 months, it was, instead of 60 or 70, it was 15. And we did another 3 months, and it was 5. Good direction. Then we do another 3 months, and they were finally negative. So far, each and every case that followed the direction became negative. So you might ask, how do you know how bad their cancer was? My answer is, I don't know, and I don't care. What's the definition? What's the difference between ignorance and apathy? I don't know and I don't care. That's what is the case here. We don't really need to know more. What we need to know is there is no more cancer. Perhaps if some of those people did a colonoscopy, they would have found something. Perhaps not. But we had time, and we used it. So what did we do in that time? We eliminated the #1 cause for cancer, which is chronic inflammation. We all have chronic inflammation because of our lifestyle, and I could tell you for 6 hours why it is that we are inflamed as a society. But the gastrointestinal tract is the #1 place where we are inflamed. And you think it's normal to fart, normal to have bloating, discomfort, normal to have some digestive issue, maldigestion, because it's so common, but it's not normal. And each one of those will indicate that you have an inflammatory process in the gut. It's chronic. That leads to inflammation throughout your whole body. For example, if you have an unstable gut mucosal lining, you develop something known as gut permeability, and you allow various toxins from bacteria in the gut to end up in your circulation. That's called endotoxemia. Very common today. Inflammation of the gut, therefore, leads to inflammation outside of the gut. In your brain, or in your tissues elsewhere, and that could set the stage for cancers elsewhere in your body. There is truth to death begins in the colon, but it's not just the colon, it's the entire intestine. Most of those endotoxins will come from the small intestine, not from the colon. But if they are manufactured in the small intestine, a large number of them will end up in the colon on the way out, and they will cause inflammation in your large intestine. Sometimes the permeability is so high that full gram-negative bacteria are going to be crossing into the blood, causing metabolic bacteremia, which is a condition that leads to global inflammation and also leads you to develop obesity, to be unable to lose weight. It changes your entire metabolism. That's why it's called metabolic bacteremia. It's very common today. There's a reason why so many people, well, 2/3 of Americans are overweight or about to be obese, because they all are carrying significant inflammation in their gut and a disturbed microbiome. The bacteria, the microbiota within your gut is so severely imbalanced that the pathogenic microbes are exceeding the symbiont, the healthy ones. And the versatility of them diminishes too. You end up failing to manufacture short-chain fatty acids, vitamins, minerals, enzymes. Everything you need to protect yourself is scarce as a result. So inflammation in the gut is something we must address. That's why I don't just test the M2PK to find out if you have colorectal cancer. I want to know what's causing your inflammation so I can treat the cause and eliminate the cancer. How do I find out what's causing your inflammation? By looking at 30 different parameters in the stool. Certain things that increase the risk of inflammation are eating too many fatty acids that come from animals. These are saturated fats that are long chain, and they are also devoid of fiber, and that would potentially increase the rate of formation of pathogens and decrease the level of symbiont and healthy microbes that help the cells create energy and reduce inflammation. If you eat food that are without fiber, you also create rotting, you create protein excess, you create dyspepsia, fermentation, putrefaction, all of which increase the inflammatory process. There are many nutrients that are formed by the bacteria that are healthy and protect us from colorectal cancer, and some nutrients we need to get from the outside, like vitamin D and vitamin C, which by the way is also a natural antihistamine. So there are various things that you can do to slow down the inflammatory process and also target individually the appropriate treatment based on the findings in that test. And if you want to know more about this test, Joy will give you a flyer that tells you a lot more about it. So that was another example of what happens when we catch cancer early. But what about cancers like pancreatic cancer or liver cancer, something that is so internal that is not easy to access and slough off, like the gut. The gut has a high turnover rate. The skin has high turnover rate. Why? Because they are the connection between us and the environment. Anything that is connecting with the environment is going through friction. So cells that are designed to live in constant friction with the environment must be continuously replicating themselves. That's an opportunity for us to get rid of the cancerous ones. But if it's a solid tumor inside a solid organ, it's a different story. Then we need to have tricks to get in there and eliminate the tumor. So you might say, wait a minute, aren't you holistic? Why do you need to eliminate the tumor? Why don't you just let the body do it, right? Just give the immune system what it needs. Support those cytokines, the natural killer cells, the natural T killer cells. Support the immune system and it will do its own job, right? Don't we want to believe that? I want to believe that. But I'm a scientist. I'm sorry, I have to work with experience. What do I actually see? I cannot use what I believe. Because when you come to me, you don't want my belief or my personal opinion. You want to know what is my experience. Am I accurate about that? Unfortunately, too many patients go to the same doctor who attends the same church or synagogue. And they believe that just because they share the same faith, this person will give them the appropriate advice. But that is irrelevant to what the person really learned. We all are human beings, and we don't know everything. And we don't necessarily have to know everything. But our experience is really important here. I have had thousands of patients try this approach of killing the cancer without doing anything. Just diet, supplements, guided imagery, positive thinking. And yes, I have seen a few of those miracles. And books have been written about them. But those are deceptive books. And they're deceptive claims made by all those big cancer centers south of the border, north of the border, inside the US. There are those cancer clinics. Now let's divide them into two different types of cancer clinics. One that are holistic and one that are allopathic, oncology based. They both do the same thing. They both are guilty of the same behavior. Yes, I am holistic, but we have to hold the holistic clinics to some standards, don't you agree? They have to provide the goods or else. They have to show real research that would prove their claims. The problem is, and that was just a week ago in the USA Today, the first page article was about cancer centers giving false hope to desperate cancer patients. And that was Cancer Centers of America. That was not holistic. That was the allopathic cancer centers. And they were saying there, giving advice and an example of how doctors are leading their patients to believe that they're going on the right path when their statistical chance is minuscule. And people really believe and have high hope, and they die just as fast, if not sooner. Or sometimes they live 2 extra months, but in horrible agony. It was not worth it. If they knew in advance, they wouldn't even have taken that route. Those clinics are making billions of dollars, scaring people into doing those treatments because people believe it would help them. But it fails. But the same thing is happening with holistic clinics. They also need to make money. They also need you to go there. But there's no insurance. You have to pay out of pocket. You have to mortgage your home. You have to destroy your inheritance to your children because you're hoping that they will save you. And why do you hope that? Because of the claims they make. So let's analyze those claims. Are they real? They want to believe they are real. They're not bad people. But what do they do to find out if they're telling the truth? What would you do if you had a patient coming to get some cancer care for 3 or 4 weeks? What would you do afterwards to find out if your treatment was successful? They're gone. They're not in your clinic anymore. What do you do? Make a phone call, right? Call them every few weeks. None of those places do that. Why are they making claim that they're doing research? That they're finding out how to treat people? That they have such a high success rate? When they don't even bother to call the people. They already have their money. The people have finished the treatment. Yes, maybe they felt a little better because they stopped eating inflammatory foods for 3 weeks. But they go back home, and within a few more weeks, they're back in step 1. Nobody is even bothering to call them and find out the truth. I'm talking about my patients who went to those places and did the phone calling instead of the center. They called 100 people who were there concomitantly, and none of them got one phone call. Yet the claims are being made by the holistic centers. You just don't know, and they don't know if they have the success that they claim. And in fact, if they had a success, you don't even know if it's theirs to make. Because maybe the patient did a few of the things that they recommended, but also did a surgery, or also did something else. You don't know which one really worked in that case. How would you know? They cannot make that claim scientifically. And what if they did help one person in 100 survive? And I think it's logical to assume that at least 1 in 100 would survive. Again, we have skewed statistics because that one person will refer everybody to that clinic. The 99% are in the grave. They're not talking. They're not referring anyone. And their family are sad and quiet and want to forget the pain of losing a loved one. So you don't hear their stories ever. And they're also ashamed because they spent so much money and they lost. They don't want to talk about it. People don't want to talk about their big mistakes, do they? How many of you like to share with the world that time when you spent half of your property on the lottery and lost? You don't share that experience, do you? You only tell people about your success when you went to Las Vegas, not all of your failures. So from that, people might think, hey, well, let's go to Vegas, everybody succeeds. That is why it's so risky. And we have to hold ourselves in the holistic world to certain standards. So let's assume that 99 or 98 people need additional help to get rid of their cancer. That they changed their diet and maybe they slowed cancer's progression. That's great. Slow its progression, you have more time. But does it mean that you can reverse the tumor? Not necessarily. Why do you have the tumor in the first place? Because the immune system was not strong enough, and it allowed it to go from here to here, or from here to here. The problem is, even the holistic clinics, even the holistic centers, depend on the diagnosis to happen here. When you go to any cancer center, the most holistic of them all, you go because your cancer was diagnosed right here. Even holistic practitioners are focusing on cancer now and calling themselves, I am a naturopathic oncologist. I am a Chinese medicine oncologist. I am an integrative oncologist. They like to use the word oncology. They depend on the cancer being advanced, diagnosed in the late phase before they can start treating you. This new paradigm eliminates even them, because this is not oncology. You catch it so early, you don't need oncology, even if it's holistic. All you need to do is two things. One, treat the causes and improve the biological terrain, increase the resistance of your system, reduce the inflammation. That's the background that allowed the cancer to grow in the first place. You have to do that, or else the cancer will grow, or you'll get new ones because your skin or your tissue or your liver or your colon has learned the trick of becoming immortalized. What are cancer cells? They are immortal cells. They learn to replicate indefinitely. They learn the trick as long as you have submerged them in a horrible environment that made them pressured into changing genetically. And that's why you cannot trust your system to be powerful enough to undo this trend when it already has allowed it to happen, unless you really know what are the causes. If you don't know the causes, you're guessing. So what are common guesses? Let's avoid dairy. Let's avoid gluten. Let's avoid this. Let's avoid that. Okay, from now on, I'm getting out of the city and I'm stopping all this horrible smog inhalation. Okay, or I'm getting out of the city because I don't want to be around Manhattan poop. Whatever it is. People are going to simply guess on a few important things, but how do you know that they are the important things that are mattering to you? How do you know if it will reduce your form of inflammation? Do you know about your different parameters? You don't. So those guesses are not enough. They might be bringing you slightly in the right direction. Maybe you're still digging your grave, but not as fast. So it's already a good thing to dig it slower, right? It gives you a little more time. But it's not enough. So you need something more powerful. That is the second aspect of treatment. And that is targeting the tumors themselves. Why is that? Because each tumor, if it's big enough to have accrued 2 million cells, which is when the blood test, the INOX2, will catch it, when you have 2 million cells the size of a pinhead, if it's late enough to have 2 million cells, those 2 million cells are now a source of stress on your immune system. A lot of immune components are going to that cancer, recognizing it as being foreign and trying to take it out. So those cells, those adapted, non-specific immune system, that cellular immune system that is designed to fight cancer, is too busy dealing with tumors that are real tumors, visible tumors. And there's not much left of the immune system to handle tiny metastases that might be spread around, or any secondary tumor that is there. And then you cannot change the terrain enough, because the more you do, the immune system is being wasted on that cancer. If you have inflammation in the gut, how much of the immune system is left in your blood when it is spilling into your gut all the time? Remember, 70% more or less of the immune system is in the digestive tract. That means that if something is wrong in your gut, a big chunk of the immune system is gone. It's going down the drain through your poop. and you are left with not much to handle cancer in your tissues. That's why, even though it sounds unholistic, I don't care, I want results. I don't care if you will tell me, oh, I'm not holistic enough. I'm a realist. I've seen too many people try and fail. And the few that succeed are too few for me to assume it would work for everyone. I can't take that responsibility. So I'm telling you, deal with the tumor. Remove it in any which way. If you know it's cancerous, using the non-biopsy approach, you need to try and take it out. And there are a few ways to do that. One is called cryoablation. With cryoablation, you just stick a needle right into the tumor, and there's no surgery necessary. You connect it with a small tube to liquid nitrogen, and then the lump or tumor freezes, dies, and gets resolved by your own tissues and disappears. You don't need a surgery. Even lumpectomy is unnecessary anymore. You just have to do cryoablation. You can do it with other tumors, not just in the breast, but any place where you can access a solid tumor. You can stick that needle through it with a guided, through ultrasound or MRI, and freeze it instantly. And then your own tissues, your own immune system simply resorbs that tumor, that dead tumor, and you're done. Then you can deal with everything else, because your immune system is not wasting its energy on that tumor anymore. Another aspect is HIFU, high intensity focal ultrasound surgery. It's been around for 10 years, but American doctors won't tell you about it. Surgeons are afraid to lose their job because now it's the radiologists who eliminate your tumors using focal ultrasound without even cutting your skin. Even if you had a brain tumor or a tumor inside your bone, it can be annihilated, evaporated, without even cutting your skin, without surgery, no knife, no needles. So simple. And it can be done in a matter of an hour, and you can go back home as if nothing happened. Unfortunately, the experience with HIFU is limited now to lesions that are not too big. So if you have a lesion that's above a centimeter and a half or 2, you need to find other methods to shrink it first. And plus, in the United States, they use HIFU for prostate cancer. HIFU. They use it for prostate cancer, but in Europe and in Asia, they use it for just about any other type of cancer. In here, they just are so limiting and limited, and they even refuse to do HIFU until they do what first?
Biopsy.
Biopsy. So they want to spread it before they treat it. It's ridiculous. And the one urologist who wrote a book about it and explained everything about the risk of doing a biopsy on prostate cancer, they took his license away. Because he was sending people to do HIFU after 3T MRI instead of after doing a biopsy. It's a very bad environment here for doctors who want to practice outside of the standard. But it's possible, and it's being done. You just need to know how to maneuver it with the appropriate patients who are seeking that type of information and that type of therapy, and not the ones who already have been so deeply ingrained in the system. But I've had patients who had that situation, and they did go to their surgeon and said, I have breast cancer. The Inox-2 test in the blood showed me that I have breast cancer. Please remove it, lumpectomy. The doctors refused. They wanted to do a biopsy. She didn't want it. I said, I don't need it. I already know I have a breast cancer. She had to go back and forth and look for several surgeons. She got so exasperated she was willing to give up and have a biopsy just so that they can remove it. That's when I told her, okay, here are some scientific articles. Bring them to the surgeon. Show the surgeon the risk involved and tell the surgeon, here is the science. Are you willing to sign a statement to the effect that if you do a biopsy on me, nothing will ever happen to me and I will never have a metastasis as a result of this biopsy? Within a week, she got a phone call and they agreed to do the lumpectomy without a biopsy. Because they talked to a lawyer and they knew that once the information is out, once you know the risk and you confront them with that risk, they cannot do something without severe malpractice. Because if something happens later, you can blame them for metastasizing and killing you. So there are ways, but it's not so easy in our system. You just need to know. You need to have the science. So sometimes I give patients a bunch of articles so that they can go to their doctors and make them ashamed. And then the doctors are willing to do what they tell them to do. But it's an unfortunate situation. HIFU could have been used for so many tumors and eliminate them just like that, including pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, as long as it's solid, discrete, visible tumors. But what do you do when you are catching it not just here, but even slightly down here, in the bottom, when it's really, really early? Even invisible to an MRI or to a 3T MRI, when it's 2 millimeters and below, when you just know that the INOX-2 test was positive but you cannot see it on imaging study, what do you do then? That's when we need to treat something on a cellular level. We have even more time. The immune system will be more powerful because it's easier to take out individual cells or small tiny clumps of cells than large discrete tumors. We just need to somehow reach the area. And there is a method called photodynamic laser tumor therapy. It's been practiced in Germany for at least 10 years. And it's gotten better and better and better. In the US, they're still not doing it. And it's non-invasive. That's good for tumors that you cannot see, but you know they exist because of the diagnostics that were done to catch things early. You just need to put a specific bioactive dye that is activated through laser illumination. It is going specifically into cancer cells because their metabolism calls for it to enter them and not normal cells. And then when you shine the laser, which can be done either through the veins, you can shine laser through the blood vessels, or you can shine it by sending a camera into a tube, depending where the tumor is. And the dye can be injected either through the vein to get to a location of interest, of where we want the treatment, or we can actually inject the dye into the interstitium, the area between the cells, in the tissue itself. And then we can target lymphatics that way, or the tissues of an organ instead of the blood vessels, and reach very exactly the location we want to treat. Once the material is inside those cancer cells, the laser will only kill the cancer cells. This is important with cancers that are touching vital tissue, something that is right on a blood vessel. And you don't want to destroy the tumor because the blood vessel will be destroyed and you will bleed to death, for example. In that situation, you need to target just the cancer cells. So this can be done. It's already being done today. And people who need that at the moment need to go to Germany, but we're trying to get a local American doctor to bring it here and do it in the United States in order to help people and prevent them from having to run around and look for some solution. So ultimately, the ideal center for treating cancer on an early phase to completely avoid the fear of cancer is a center where you go for one day, you get a treatment for half an hour, or an hour, or 2 hours, and you go home and you go to work the next day like nothing happened. That is definitely easier than dealing with the flu, which keeps you at home for a week sometimes. So then, indeed, cancer becomes better than a flu. It becomes so easy that nobody is afraid of it. It's no longer the big C, it's a tiny C, and you don't care if you have a cancer, And you don't have to be managed as a cancer patient anymore. You eliminate the tumor, but you also deal with the inflammation, with the terrain, with all the causes, with the risk factors. And for that you need to know what the risk factors are. How do you know what they are? I wrote them down for you. There is a flyer there, which you can also get digitally if you email clinic@ecopolitan.com. My assistant Angie will send you the digital form if you need it, if you want to copy it for your friends. It has in it the risk factors listed conveniently in one place. By going down the risk factor list, putting check marks against the one that apply to you, you know what you need to work on. If you don't understand exactly what needs to be done, call us and we will help you. For example, one of the biggest risk factors is electromagnetic exposure, especially in children. They get leukemia and lymphoma just like that, by being exposed to dirty electricity. Now I have a 6-hour seminar dedicated just to this topic, but in 15 to 20 minutes you can get the gist of a few little things that you need to do to eliminate that risk, especially for children, because with them you eliminate the risk factor and within 2 weeks they don't have cancer. It can be that fast, especially with leukemia and lymphoma. And you put them in harm's way and instantly they have cancer again. And you take it away and the cancer disappears again. Showing that cancer is basically a responsive entity to whatever you put on in the environment and on your body. And you have to change those risk factors. So just following that list and removing your own individual risk factors will dramatically reduce your risk of A, contracting cancer, B, allowing whatever you currently have to evolve further or progress more, and C, teach you a healthy lifestyle that will make you a healthier person in general. Because cancer is the ultimate degenerative disease. It's a chronic illness that shouldn't be there. If you have no other chronic degenerative diseases, you have real anti-aging. Cancer is a form of degeneration, and it is therefore so connected intimately with the chronic inflammation that is also a cause for degeneration. They work hand in hand. So do whatever you need with the risk factor. If you don't know, some of them are very obvious, like organic food instead of pesticides, avoiding pollutants, reducing exposure to this and that. But some are less commonly known. For example, how many of you think that where cholesterol should be the lower the better? Most of you have been to my lectures. The important thing is people believe from their doctors that they need to have the lowest cholesterol, and if it's low, they're told you're good, you're normal, you're healthy. But cholesterol below 140 is high risk for cancer. It's better to have high cholesterol than low cholesterol, and I bet anybody who has advancing cancer, the cholesterol level is very low. So you want to increase your cholesterol, not decrease it, in many cases, if you want to fight cancer. So that's a risk factor on the list, cholesterol below 140. If it's low, what do? Do you start eating lots of meat to get your cholesterol high? No, because you have no fiber and no fiber-related nutrients and too much of the wrong types of fat and nitrates and nitrites and all those other things that cause mortality and morbidity to increase. Both, there was a recent study in the British Medical Journal, just recently came out, showing conclusively that the more red meat you eat, the higher the mortality from all causes, and also from 9 specific causes. So, I'm not saying you have to be 100% if you don't want to, but reduce dramatically, that's just one of the risk factors. But if your cholesterol is low, your problem is in the liver. Your liver is not making enough cholesterol, so then the treatment has to be liver specific so you can make more cholesterol. Then you'll be in better shape also mentally, because cholesterol is crucial for your brain function. If you're highly depressed, sometimes it's because your cholesterol is very low and you're not making enough membrane cholesterol for your cell membrane. The nerves are all covered with cholesterol sheets. There are other risk factors that are listed there. You can read them for yourself and do your own score. If you don't know what to do, we can help you. So, last thing. We mentioned something about being active, bioactive against cancer. There are many things in your diet that are naturally bioactive against cancer. All of them come from plants. And the less plant you eat, the less of them you get. And the higher the risk of cancer because of simply insufficient nutrients that stop the formation and progression of cancer. Some of them are well known, like EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, curcuminoid, polyphenols, proanthocyanidins, and so on. There are so many of those. Bioflavonoids of different kinds. You need to eat a lot of greens and spices and naturally things that grow on plants, roots and bulbs and leaves and stems and flowers. And if you want to know more about that, I invite you to join my foraging trip in August. I take groups once a year for 4 days of foraging in Wisconsin. Then you really learn. Normally I can get only up to 25 people. It's always full. People fly from all over the country just to learn how to forage. And during that foraging experience of 4 days, I give about 20 lectures on different topics that teach you about health and nature. And what nature tells us about health that refutes everything that you've heard by the so-called experts, which give you man-made information that just justifies their own existence. They don't know more than nature. And until they go into nature, they will never really know it. We came from nature. Our body came from nature. Our physiology has been adapted to nature. Therefore, everything that's in nature is something that somehow molecularly we are interconnected with. And this is not a spiritual statement, it's a physical statement. It's a chemical statement. I have nothing against the spiritual, by the way. But I want you to know this goes beyond the spiritual. This is so real, and I can actually describe it molecularly. For example, I have the bioactive plant fraction formulas, which are extracted from plants, and they are proven by hundreds of scientific articles. Each and every one of them can eliminate cancer, can fight cancer, can fight inflammation, can fight viruses that lead to cancer, can fight bacteria and fungus by causing them to retreat. These are molecules that make you feel great when you go into the forest. You inhale them. When you go into nature, you experience amazing things, and you don't always know why. You think it's the fresh air? No. Fresh air is air. It has nothing in it besides oxygen. That's great, but you're not going to feel that much greater by changing your oxygen environment from 21% to 22% or 19 to 20. That's not going to make a big difference. What makes a difference is what you inhale that's positively present in nature. Those molecules, the terpinenphorol, the nerolidol, the cineol, the carvacrol, the farnesol, the limonene, and others like them, those are the molecules that are made by numerous plants to protect themselves from their own environment as they have evolved to withstand their own evolutionary pressures by microbes, bugs, parasites. And they are making those molecules to protect themselves every second. And those are volatile molecules that go into the air and we inhale them when we go to nature. If you don't inhale them because you're in the house, or because in the winter you don't live in the tropics anymore and you experience snow and nothing else, you are suffering from the deficiency of those nutrients, which nobody even counts as nutrients, because in nature you would just inhale them every second of your life. It's just as important as vitamins, but nobody talks about it. These are the kind of things we talk about doing foraging. And I have those formulas that have those molecules so that you can inhale them at home instead of going to the forest. Although Central Park is right here, I don't know how clean it is. And I don't know how many of those molecules it really emits, except for in the very short season, because it's different types of plants from what we have enjoyed during our own evolution in the tropics, where we came from. All humans came from the tropics. So we have to look at nature and see what it is that our physiology adapted to. And another thing that's really important is to avoid the obvious deficiencies that we all have. Now you don't think about that because you take your vitamin C every day, right? Raise your hand if you take vitamin C every day. About 30% of you, which is surprisingly high. But 70% of you are not taking vitamin C every day. In nature, you would be having it every day in your food. Today, your closest food to fresh is what? Angelica's kitchen or?
Close down.
Closed down. Okay, no more fresh food. So maybe, okay, Whole Food Market, whole wallet, whatever you call it. So you lose, so you go to those places and the food has been grown and picked how many weeks ago?
3, 4.
And it was not even ripe. You lost a lot of those nutrients. You don't have that much vitamin C or bioflavonoids in there that are active anymore. So unfortunately, people are walking around thinking, I eat healthy, but they're deficient. When we go foraging, we will talk about nutrient density and nutrient necessity. Two different things. Nutrient necessities are no less important than nutrient density. Often people are nutritarian. They care about how many vitamins and minerals per calorie that they eat. But some foods are so important for your health, even though they're rich with calories and have very poor nutrient level. That's nutrient necessity. If you don't observe both rules of nutrient necessity and nutrient density, you end up with a risk of cancer. Because your system is insufficiently equipped. Not enough zinc, not enough, polyphenols or bioflavonoids, etc. You don't have something. What is a very common nutrient that everybody is deficient in, besides vitamin C?
Vitamin D.
Vitamin D. So, okay, let's assume that everybody here is taking vitamin D supplements during the winter and is exposed to the sun with full body nudity every other day at least during the summer. Okay? Let's assume that you're doing the right thing and you're allowing the sun to caress and embrace every square inch. Let's assume that. We know it's not the case. But vitamin D you already know about. What nutrients are you deficient in that you don't know about, but could definitely cause cancer formation? Iodine is one.
Magnesium.
Magnesium is very commonly deficient. Selenium depends what you eat, but it's very common. Yeah, zinc is less common. People get it in supplements very easily. Vitamin A could be deficient in a lot of people if they don't convert the carotenoids to vitamin A.
K.
B12 is very rarely deficient because people take supplements with it very easily nowadays. You have to be literally living somewhere in the boonies not to know about it. So people in Manhattan are fairly well aware and they get their B12. K2 is not that difficult if you get lots of green leafy vegetables, and it's also in many supplements, and it's been a trend, so it's not very likely to be a problem. And potassium is available in most vegetables and fruit, not a big deal. But there is one nutrient that is crucial for the immune system, and it is also happening to be the nutrient for your hair, nails, skin, collagen.
Biotin.
Sulfur. Sulfur. It is extremely common macronutrient. It is not a micro, it's macro. You measure it in milligram, not in microgram. It's in your body at the same level as potassium is, but nobody talks about it. even though it's crucial for your immune system and for your resistance and for your detoxification and for your antioxidant capability. I have a whole lecture dedicated to sulfur. We won't do it now. But it's so important. Yes, sulfation pathway in the liver is one of the most important detoxification pathways. You need sulfur for that. But here's something most people don't know. What is one of the main cash currency of the immune system? Antibodies. You heard of those? You make antibodies to fight antigens, which is the stuff that you don't want in your body. You make antibodies to fight those antigens, to clump to them and to hone the immune system, to bring them, to shuffle the immune system to those antigens, to take them out, to kill them. What are those antibodies made of? They're made of protein chains, light chains and heavy chains they're called, and they're put together in different configurations depending on what type of antibody it is. IgA, IgE, IgD, IgG, and IgE. These are different antibodies that have a different level of reactivity. Some will react fast, some slow. All of those are made with sulfur holding the chains together. It's called a disulfide bond that holds the chains together. Without sufficient sulfur, you will never create antibodies. Your immune system will never be able to get to square two from square one. You'll be a sitting duck, ready to be taken by anything that comes from the outside and having no resistance. Why are we deficient in sulfur? Because of our polluted environment that takes sulfur away from us. All the time we lose sulfur in our poop and in our urine as we detoxify things using the sulfur, heavy metals and so on. A. B. Free radical damage. Glutathione and other things like biotin and so on require sulfur. Cysteine and N-acetylcysteine have sulfur. All of them will not be created in the body if we don't have enough sulfur. So we have too much free radical damage, and we lose even more sulfur as a result. Our immune system is challenged continuously because of vaccinations. Vaccination is designed to increase dramatically the level of antibody you make. Otherwise, you cannot justify selling them. That means more sulfur is being destroyed, is being eliminated, used up. And we don't eat enough foods that are rich in sulfur. Some of them for social reasons, garlic, onion, etc. And others, we don't eat enough because of taste and spoiledness, being brats. You know, we don't want to eat cauliflower. We don't want to have broccoli. Even though those are fairly good with their sulfur level, people don't eat enough of them. And because of doctors, even holistic ones who tell you, don't eat crucifers because you have a thyroid condition. It's ridiculous. So because you have a thyroid condition, now you have to also have cancer? You should have your crucifers. But people avoid them for various reasons. So you don't get enough sulfur, and that's why in the Himalayas there is an amazing salt that is rich with sulfur. It's so tasty because of the sulfur, it almost tastes like eggs. It makes everything come to life when you eat it. This sulfur-rich salt is excavated in the Himalayas. It's clean. It's called the black Himalayan sulfur-rich salt. And I eat it every day to get sulfur. It's the only easy source of sulfur to get in your daily life when you eat salt anyway. Don't lose the opportunity to get sulfur. And it also supports...
I'm going to open it.
Oh, okay.
So
it's
we
also,
can all smell it, and it really is
no,
like
no, you know, some people don't like the smell the first time. They have to taste it. Tasting is the trick, not smelling. Although, when you smell it, you feel like you've been to the spa. You know those hot spring spa that have that smell of rat eggs? So it smells a little bit like that. And in the spa you love it, but not in your food. So remember, if you inhale that smell, after you touch a little liquid, you end up benefiting like you would in the spa. But it's better to eat it. in your food, it will not smell at all. And it supports the orphanages and the schools and the child care center that we have in Nepal. If any of you want to come volunteer in Nepal, we have a lot of places to volunteer, schools and orphanages that we have built. And you know, anybody is welcome to come and join a trek. The next trek is in October. And if you want to come trekking with me, you just have to contact Angie and join us. It's a beautiful trek. You see amazing views of the Himalayas. You get to see the children in the orphanages. They're amazing children. They make you fall in love with children again. Even if you never want to have children, even if you think that children are horrible, when you meet those Nepali children, you'll realize how wonderful children can be. And you would want to maybe have some. If you give them the environment that the Nepali children have. It's a very easy environment to give them. You simply have to take away the Western stuff that we have imposed upon our children. And they suddenly become healthy and they thrive. So when you do that, the salt, you know, the salt that you buy or and eat will support those orphanages that you will see for yourself if you come trekking. And if you want to volunteer and teach English or art or sports, anything, the children are so eager to learn. You can stay with them for as long as you want. Room and board is covered. If you go on a trek, you can stay at the end of the trek and volunteer for as long as you want. We had people do that even for a year. It changed their life completely. So these are a few things that you support when you eat the black sulfur-rich salt, in addition to supporting your health and longevity. So I'm happy that you stayed as long as you did in this moist, sultry environment. If you want to have your skin checked for free, that's a quick inspection. It can be done during our clinic hours tomorrow morning. You can have your skin inspected for quick evaluation to know if you have any of those pre-melanomas, pre-carcinomas, or even if you just want to get rid of something unsightly. A mole, you know, something protruding, you can easily do that on the spot. If we find something, we don't have to make an appointment for anesthesia and for staff in the hospital. You don't have to do that. On the spot it can be done in a few seconds to a few minutes. Sometimes 100 skin cancers can be eliminated in 10 minutes on one person. It is so easy.
Where is the clinic?
So for information about the clinic, just talk to Joey. He will be signing people up who want to do it. The inspection is free of charge, but if you have things removed or treated, there is a fee. And that goes to support our non-profit activities in Nepal. We are protecting 20,000 children from child trafficking by giving them education, quality education, healthcare, food, nourishment, anything that they need to be healthy and to have their community healthy enough to prevent them from being trafficked. That's the most effective way to prevent child trafficking, not to find them after the fact, but to make their community strong, to give them infrastructure. And then there is never a chance that they will be kidnapped or sold for prostitution or slavery, which is the most horrifying tragedy you can imagine. For an 8-year-old girl to be in a concrete cell, not even being given breakfast until she satisfies 30 men, and she's only 8 or 9 years old. By the time she's 16, she has no life left in her. And this happens a lot. Nepali girls get taken to India for that. And children, boys get into slavery of other forms. This is unthinkable that it's happening right now to 15,000 children every year in Nepal. And what we do can prevent that. If you come with us, you can see for yourself how we do that. We have a method. We have special social welfare that we have created. We work with the Nepali government. The Ecopolitan has been recognized as an international NGO by the Nepali government. We've been honored, and the government supports everything we do in Nepal. They let us do whatever we want. That's why we managed to build 3 orphanages already. It's very difficult to do. We have 200 schools and other things. And the method is to grow this. If we can get to 500,000 children, 1 million children, child trafficking will stop completely. So you need to be aware of that and spread the word. People who want to contribute can do so. Definitely use the salt, use the whatever services you feel are good for your health, and come trekking with us, and come foraging in August if you cannot make it all the way to Nepal. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I also want to say, I didn't think of saying this, but because you're talking about Nepal and what you're doing there, I also want to say that I'm rebuilding my center in Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico is slowly descending into the same situation with Nepal, you know, because they have declared bankruptcy now. But I love my 10-acre farm in Puerto Rico, and so I've spent the last year renovating it. I was established as a not-for-profit originally when I started it 30 years ago, and I'm reestablishing my not-for-profit. And for the last year, I have put all of my extra money into rebuilding it and making it into the beautiful holistic center that it once was. And I'm out of money. So as soon as I get reestablished as a not-for-profit, then everybody can start sending money to Puerto Rico and Jane Goldberg and La Casa de Vida down there. That would be lovely, and I hope everybody comes and visits. This has been an amazing evening. I just want to thank Dr. Tel-Oren so much for being here. And he comes around these parts every 3 months, and I really hope that he's going to make it a routine of his to come speak in Casa. Whenever he's in New York, you know, everyone that's here sees this man has more breadth of knowledge than anyone that you have heard. And we just all need to follow him everywhere.
To Nepal?
No, a little closer is, where is Minnesota? Where is
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Foraging is in Wisconsin.
Sounds wonderful.
Yes. Are you coming foraging?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
When do you sign up?
You can sign up already. Just
I'm signing up
tell
tomorrow.
Angie. Tell Angie you want to sign up. It's August, I think, 5 through 9. It's a Wednesday evening until Sunday.
I want to say 2 more things. In terms of the plant fractions that he was talking about, I've been asking him this question, and he hasn't answered, so I'm going to ask him now. The paper that I have, that I sent to you, can I send that out? Did you write that? And do I have...
About the bioactive plant fraction?
Yes.
Yeah, I wrote
Do
that.
I have
It
your...
has my name on it, right?
It doesn't,
Oh.
actually. But do I have your permission to send it out as a musings? So that everybody here, if I don't have your email, make sure I do. And then you can read why this works and exactly what it is.
Absolutely. I want to read it again. I saw 150 to 160 people every day in the last week for skin, you know. So I didn't have time to even open my email. You saw I only gave you very short, brief answers between people. I was so rushed
So
from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. every day with so many patients and skin cancers and eliminating surgeries for babies. So I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to see
I will send it
using.
to, I will send it to everybody. No, I haven't sent it out.
No, I want to see it again. I mean, I want to see if it's what I wrote.
Yes.
Because if it's bioactive plant fraction, it is because it's my creation. It's
Yes,
meant to be.
yes, it's yours. I know it's yours.
Okay.
So I want everybody to read it because you will incorporate this into your lifestyle and it'll be a wonderful addition. The other thing that I just want to... Yes, of course.
So they can buy it from you.
You can buy it from me.
The salt too.
And the salt.
By what? What's the
The
first
salt that I just passed
name? Right,
around.
and something else?
Joy has about 10 or 12 that he needs to get rid of because it's heavy for him to
Right.
carry them along, you know, from block to block. But generally speaking, aside from that, you can always get the salt here from Jane.
So I just want to say one more thing about the cancer test. One of the cancer tests that he's talked about, the Onyx test, which we're calling the Oncoplot.
Yeah, can you talk louder? Or can you, sorry, can you?
Nobody can, you can't be
The
heard.
Oncoplot test is the name of the test that he was referring to as the Onyx test.
Enox.
Enox, thank you.
I-N-O.
E. E-N-O-X.
E-N-O-X.
O-X2.
So this, I'm going to tell you what my understanding is, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me. My understanding is that the reason why it's important to check your whole body always to see whether or not you have 2 million cancer cells circulating is because 2 million is the important point. 2 million is when the cancer cell, if you have, you know, Lewis Thomas, the former head of Sloan Kettering, he developed the theory that we all have cancer. So, you know, this is traditional cancer philosophy. We all have, since he was the head of Sloan Kettering, we all have cancer cells circulating in our bodies, our immune systems recognize it, and, you know, there's no problem. But when you have over 2 million cells, that's when the cells begin to aggregate. And that's when a tumor can form, and then the problem with the tumor is that then it metastasizes, and then that's really a problem. Is that a correct understanding?
Almost. Not exact, because you don't have to have cancer cells circulating. To have even one tumor, solid tumor in a tissue, can already have 2 million cells right in it. So it doesn't have to aggregate after having 2 million cells circulating. If you have a small, tiny tumor growing in you, starting from 4 to 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, it won't take too long before it gets to 2 million. And only at that point, it will be recognized by the Enox-2 test, because before that, it's not secreting enough of that protein. Enox-2 is a protein that's expressed on the surface of a cancer cell. So it's the Enox-2 that's circulating, not the cancer. That protein is circulating, and when you have enough of it, because 2 million cells have expressed it, then you can measure it in that blood test. You don't measure the cancer, you measure the Enox-2 protein that came from it. So if you have 100 tiny tumors, each one has only 20,000 cells, which is a tiny invisible tumor. Together it's 2 million. It will show positive on the Enox test. Or if you have one tumor that is 2 million cells, the size of a pinhead, tiny pinhead, that will also show a positive Enox. So it doesn't really matter if you have 1,000 tiny ones or one big one. As long as you hit 2 million, it will show on the blood test looking for the expression of the protein called Enox-2 on the surface of those cells. And that protein is making those cells capable of growing fast enough to replicate. A cell cannot duplicate itself, divide into two, unless it's big enough first. If you block the Enox-2 protein, the cell will not get bigger. It will stay stationary, and then the cancer will stop growing. And that we do with different natural compounds, like the EGCG and capsaicin in hot cayenne pepper, and other food that we use as spices. We need to use more natural spices in our food than we ever did. And sometimes we need to take them in supplement because they don't absorb very well. You need to have them in specific types, like curcuminoids from curcumin, right? Turmeric, barely absorbs.
Yeah.
But there are 3 or 4 different types that have been encapsulated that are much better absorbed. 30 times, 40, 50, even 60 times better absorption and utilization. Otherwise, you can eat lots and lots of turmeric and not get the full benefit. So those are the things that we do when we get a positive Enox-2 test. It's a part of the treatment, to try and block the expression of the Enox-2 so that the cell cannot grow. It's not always enough. That's why you need to also treat the tumor and do everything else we discussed. And always, always, always address your own risk factors. Okay? That clarifies, Adiel?
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks for hosting.